listening to the Marketing Personalities Podcast, a podcast for growth-minded entrepreneurs that serves up valuable insight and interviews about aligning your marketing strategy with your personality type. Because here's the deal. You shouldn't have to feel fake and salesy in order to grow your business. And you no longer have to. Your marketing strategy can feel good to implement and it can work. You can attract the right clients and customers to your business and grow your profits, all while staying true to who you naturally are. So in the name of honest business growth, bring your unique talents, perspectives, and personality to the table. And join us on this week's podcast episode to discover marketing that feels good for you. Hey, before we get rolling here, I have a special message for you if you are a full-time business owner. You have got to know about the next Kick-Ass Mastermind Live event. It's happening from July 31st to August 2nd, 2019 in Austin, Texas. And I really want you to be there. I'm going to be there and I want you to be there too. So you've heard me talk about Kick-Ass Masterminds before, right? I myself have been in a Kick-Ass Mastermind since March 2018, and it continues to be the absolute best investment I've ever made and continue to make in my business. And seriously, I do not say that lightly. So I attended Mastermind Live in January of this year. And from that event, I got the idea, the inspiration, and the support I needed to create the Marketing Personalities affiliate program. And the affiliate program has been a massive sales generator ever since I launched it in February. And I can say this so honestly, without Mastermind Live, that affiliate program would not exist and my business wouldn't have expanded so much already this year. And that's the kind of thing that happens when you attend Mastermind Live. It's 2.5 days dedicated to masterminding ideas and strategies to expand and grow your business. With me, yes, I'll be there, and a group of 40 other established full-time business owners, all expertly curated by Sarah Christensen and her team at Kick-Ass Masterminds. So you'll be spending time with legit in the trenches entrepreneurs, and that's really what I appreciate most about this event and everything that Kick-Ass Masterminds does. See, there are zero entrepreneurs. You know what I mean, right? Like no entrepreneurs, no regurgitated business advice from people who talk the talk, but don't really walk the walk. You know, that's so annoying. No waste of time, no irrelevant guest speakers, no fluff. So if you're a full-time business owner like me, and you're dedicated to growing a sustainable company and making a big impact on this world, I know you are. You would not listen to this podcast if that was not you. Seriously, there's no better event to attend this year. So let's do this. Get all the details by visiting mastermind.live. I've linked it at the top of the show notes, so it's super easy to find. And when you decide to attend, make sure that you mention that you're a Marketing Personalities podcast listener. And when you do that, you'll get $100 off your ticket price. So totally worth it. Make sure that you mention this podcast. Early bird ticket prices, they expire on June 1st. So do not wait. Go to mastermind.live now to speak with the Kick-Ass team, sign up, and then I'll see you in Austin on July 31st. All right, let's get to the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Personalities Podcast. I'm Brit Kolo, and I'm here today with Dannie Fountain, who is a marketing strategist and Googler. Dannie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is so special. Dannie and I were introduced to each other through our mutual friend, Jess Rasdell, who I have to get on the podcast. I'm working on it. Don't worry. She will be here soon. But I saw Dannie speak last January 2018 at the Rising Tide Society Leaders Retreat. And I believe you were on a panel there. You were on a panel?
I was on the panel about diversity and inclusion. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had been following you, Dannie, for a long time. And so it was really great to see you in the wild. And I've been following you ever since. So it was really great that we were able to make the connection. And I wanted to bring Dannie on to the podcast basically to discuss everything Dannie has her hands in, because it's a lot, and how that relates to her personality type, And not to mention, the girl works for Google. So she's a super savvy digital marketing strategist. And I know there's stuff that we can all learn from her. So we're going to just dig in. All right. So Dannie, just tell us, who are you in this world? Aside from business and career, like what's going on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think of things as like the way I have things in my Instagram bio. I'm a traveler. Like if you go to my Facebook, it says I always have a suitcase packed and I can't sit still. I am a huge whiskey aficionado, tattoo enthusiast, reader. I just joined this thing called the Mouse Book Club and I'm obsessed. And also like fire community / like debt clear out freak.
So all the things. And it was so funny when we popped on to do this recording, I asked Dannie, where are you in the world? Because she's always somewhere. So traveler is definitely a solid, true, honest description. And we both giggled because she's like, well, I'm actually at home, but only till tonight. So that's so awesome. Okay. So now tell us about your business and your career, because you've kind of like, you've got the traditional career going on and you've got side hustle business. And you do this in a way I've never seen anybody do it. So just give us like the rundown of how your business and career interact and what it looks like right now.
Yeah. So career, day job. I usually say I have a 9 to 5 working at Google and a 5 to 9 doing my own thing. But I've been at Google for 2 years and I work in ad sales is the simplest way to explain it. I help businesses with their Google ads. And then in my 5 to 9, I've been running my own marketing consulting firm for going on 11 years, which is crazy. 9 of those years, it's been a side hustle. It was full-time for 2 years there in the middle. And basically the two complement each other really well. The thing that I appreciate is there's not like a productivity break. I don't have to shift gears. I leave work, go home, eat dinner, watch some crappy TV usually, and then dive into working, but it's the same thing I was doing at work. So they work really well together.
Interesting. So you've been having this marketing strategy business for 11 years. That's a long, like, just let's say like that's a long time in internet entrepreneur years. Like they're like dog years, right? So that's basically like an entire lifetime. Not really, but it kind of feels that way.
Well, the funny thing is like, I didn't even discover the online creator until 2016. So for 11, 10, 9, 8 of those years, I like didn't have this whole community. Like 2015, 2016, I found Rising Tide. I found Creative at Heart. Like I found all of those things. So it's so funny. I feel like such a newcomer to the creative entrepreneur space.
That's so interesting. So what were those early years like? Like, why did you decide to have the 9 to 5 and then the 5 to 9? What spurred that on?
Frankly, there are 4 ways that people are motivated: money, time, impact, and creative expression. And I sit firmly nestled between money and impact. So having a ongoing in perpetuity side hustle lets me foster both of those. It gives me money to travel, all of those things. And then it also lets me like work with creative entrepreneurs and businesses.
Perfectly said. Very beautifully said. Now, you also said that for a couple years there, you were full-time and then you went back to part-time. What was going on there? Like, tell me about that journey of, were you just dabbling in the full-time thing to see if it was something you liked? Just take us into that.
Yeah, to be frank, in 2015, early 2016, I had got caught up in the like creative entrepreneur mindset of like quitting your full-time job being the thing.
Mm-hmm.
We see posts in Facebook like, I quit my full-time job. Today was my last day. We see blog posts. We see all of this content around this like mythical achievement. And so that plus a few other factors in my life led me to stop having a full-time job and do the thing full-time. And the plan was to do the thing full-time, kind of in perpetuity. But then in a moment of feast and famine in the summer of 2017, I applied to an obscene number of jobs. And of the nearly 400 jobs that I applied to, only Google even reached out, let alone interviewed. And it was just this, even though I wasn't necessarily looking for a full-time job at the time, I applied mainly to see what was out there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't say no to Google. So I went full-time again.
You're right. You don't say no to Google. And I see it as such a brilliant move. But it also kind of feels, as you explain it, it kind of feels like it was fate. It just feels like it was just an easy decision. And what has that been like being welcomed into the company of Google and then allowing that to be a substantial part of your life and your professional presence while still being an incredible marketing strategist, as you say, on the side?
You know, when we were in high school and they used to say, be prepared, because when you graduate high school, even if you're the valedictorian, you go to college and all of your classmates were also valedictorians. College kind of evens the playing field of all of the smart, cocky overachievers.
Yes.
Google is doing that all over again. I thought that I was this kick-ass professional. I had everything together. I knew what I was doing. But my coworkers are Top Gun pilots and Olympians, and they've climbed Mount Everest and all of these things. They have hundreds of thousands of patents. There's just so much talent here that cocky overachiever ego check all over again. So from that regard, it's been very humbling to learn from, engage with, become friends with people who have done all of these incredible things in their lives. And at the same time, it's like drinking from a fire hose in terms of all the things that you can learn and you can do. I went to an undergrad school where it was small and we were encouraged to join a lot of clubs. So at one point, I think I was in 10 or 15 clubs. And Google is the same culture. You're encouraged to get involved, to participate in activities. It's interesting, but it's also been the greatest thing for my business. I'm a Class A procrastinator, and having that full-time job forces me to get all the things that I would get done in 40 hours done in 10. So it just forces that level of productivity that I frankly need, because YouTube and books, and it's all very attractive.
That is an interesting note. This overglorification of the entrepreneurial lifestyle, it's such a thing. It is so different the days after quitting your job than I think what you thought it was going to be. And I think regardless of your expectation, because sometimes people go into it thinking, this is going to be really hard. I'm going to quit my job. It's going to be really hard. And maybe it is hard. And then sometimes people are surprised, hey, this isn't that bad. Okay, this is fine. And then some people think it's going to be butterflies and rainbows and unicorns in there. It's not always that either. So that's interesting that you bring up, part of who you are needs that boundary of time. So you're only given so much time, and that helps you be better. That helps you be a better entrepreneur. Interesting.
Oh, yeah. For the Harry Potter fans in the room, if you've seen the Fantastic Beasts series, there's the beautiful purple, dragony flying creature. And this creature can be as small as a teapot, because at one point, Newt throws a cricket in a teapot, and this little dragony thing flies in and fits inside a teapot. But it can also be as large as an entire building. It expands or contracts to fit the space that it's given.
Yeah.
And I say that that's how I manage my time. My procrastination and my misuse of time expands or contracts to the amount of available time that I have.
So perfectly said. Wow. I can just feel so many of the listeners, regardless of personality type, thinking, oh my gosh, that's what's happening. I hear new moms talk about this too. Like they have less time, but they have become a level of efficient that they never realized was possible once they have a kid, and they only have so many hours to get stuff done. I see that you've essentially done that for yourself in this situation. Now, I'm curious, how did you start out in the ad sales department and you're still there? Have you worked yourself to that place? What does that look like?
It's an excellent question. So I've had 3 different jobs at Google, and they've all been in the ad sales department.
Okay.
And I will tell you that when I applied to the job, I was a little nervous because it was a sales job, but I was also excited because, like, in terms of the requirements and qualifications, I checked all the boxes. And as I was interviewing, it was the same thing. I was very, very nervous that it was a sales job. And in one of the interviews, I remember like nervously laughing about my lack of sales skills. And this is the thing about Google. They appreciate transparency, honesty. So we're having this conversation, and the woman that was interviewing me stops me cold in my tracks and goes, "Do you not think that you've been doing sales for the past, at that time, 9 years?" And I was like, well, I mean, and she's like, no, you've produced an entrepreneurial income. You've had to convince people to give you money. You've been doing sales for the past 9 years. Frankly, you were more qualified than 90% of the college grads I'm about to hire for this role, because you don't even realize that you were selling and you've been selling. And I was like, oh, I didn't mean to get hired in a sales job. And there have been ups and downs and struggles with quota and all of those things. But it's been interesting how happy I am working in sales.
Well, and I recognize marketing and sales are 2 different things, and yet they can be so closely related. And they can feed off of each other in a beautiful way or be at odds with one another. So how do you see yourself in your role at Google? How do you approach sales? I mean, so you've kept your job, right? Like so you've done it, and you've met your quotas. How do you do that maybe differently from other people on your team?
I think that other people on my team have a very strong technical grasp of the Google Ads platform. I think that they understand like how audiences work and the difference between a smart shopping and a regular shopping campaign and why you would do this versus that. I think my strength has been in asking the customer, okay, what are your marketing goals? And acknowledging that a business owner can't be platform loyal, for lack of a better word. Like acknowledging the customers that I'm working with need to be on Facebook, need to be on Amazon. They need to be advertising on these other platforms. And it's not about, oh, you need to shift everything you're doing to Google, but instead, how can Google capture the leads that Facebook has nurtured an interest in? So how do all the pieces fit together? And I think that's the piece that I do very well. I'm the first one to admit that my technical knowledge of Google Ads is not nearly as high as my coworkers. But my ability, and this comes from my entrepreneurship, my ability to look at like the larger marketing mix, marketing stack, whatever you want to call it, I think that's been my strength.
Okay, so I would love to reflect something to you, because what you just outlined beautifully and just completely naturally, like this is just what I do, is so supported by your personality type as an ENFJ. Because what you just said was, while some people will take the technical route and probably a more thinking route, you take a more feeling route so you can be empathetic to the whole picture. And you're asking why. because you're empathetic to their goals. And as an ENFJ, you're part of the diplomat tribe. And what we have covered so far on the podcast is that the diplomat tribe, they've got to start with why. Without a solid why behind what they're doing, they're just not in. And you already kind of referenced that before. Like, why are you pursuing a 9 to 5 and a 5 to 9? And you knew exactly your why, because your motivation is nicely nestled, right, between money and impact. Like, you knew that right off. I mean, right off the bat, not only did you know it, you could communicate it very eloquently. High five, ENFJ, that's also a thing. And so I love that distinction. I love that distinction. And I think that that can show us a lot about how we all can approach marketing and sales in a way that feels good to us. And when we feel good, we can bring our unique strengths to the table. The person we're speaking to, whether it's a one-on-one conversation in a sales call or a larger promotion within our businesses for marketing, when we feel good, our audience can feel good about it. So beautifully said and illustrated. Now I'm curious, aside from how you operate in Google, what do you do in your side hustle business to keep it going and keep it really thriving?
Yeah, I encourage the two to work off of one another. And I had to be really conscientious of time when I thought about how I was going to keep my side hustle alive. I had to get really clear on the things that were important, because I think all of us as entrepreneurs, we have all of these things that we want to try and we launch things. And when you're a full-time entrepreneur, you have the space to fail isn't the right word, but like the space to fumble. Mm-hmm. And because I was cutting a 40-hour work week and putting it into the 10 hours that I have at night throughout the week, just being realistic, my runway for experimentation is a lot more limited. And that's okay. Like, that's a season of business. So I've gotten very clear on capping the number of one-on-one projects I take, capping the number of speaking engagements I take. Even looking at my 2018 calendar versus my 2019 calendar, I think I've only taken like 8, 10 maybe speaking engagements this year, just because I'm trying to really focus and get specific. So honestly, like, it's a prioritization game. Just understanding what's important and shifting for those focuses.
Well, and what I just heard you say is that you're not trying to do everything. In your own business presence, online and offline, you didn't just tell me that you're trying to spend 2 hours over here and 2 hours over there, 2 hours. The one thing that you mentioned was speaking. It seems like even though you're taking on less of those in 2019, it's that one focus. So would you say that your primary marketing strategy involves those speaking engagements and then turning that into business growth?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%. Yeah. Like, someone saw me speak at a conference in 2017, and then they hired me to do a one-on-one, but like a private workshop for their company in 2018. And now in 2019, I'm creating custom marketing, like templates for them. It all kind of spirals from that, because speaking is the easiest way for me to reach a large, new, cold audience without getting distracted. That's not a very good explanation, but it allows me to reach that entire new audience in a way that I do well. Like, I'm a storyteller. That's the way that I market. So I'm doing that from a stage,
clapping in my in my chair. Listeners, are you hearing what she's saying? She is not only building a business that is thriving and getting clients over and over and over again, and even returning clients. She's working an incredible job that makes her happy. And she's living a lifestyle that she loves, that includes these things that she really appreciates, including travel. And I can't help but really underline the fact that in her career, she's not making herself become technical minded. She's allowing herself to use her ENFJ strengths to be empathetic to the goals and the why behind whoever she is selling to. And then in her entrepreneurial life, she's not being all the things to all the people. She's focusing in on that one thing that comes easily and natural to her, which is, as an ENFJ, we've hit this before many times. I'm an ENFJ too, so they're probably sick of hearing about ENFJs, but that's okay. It still gives a really good example of how when you know what feels good to you and what comes naturally to you, and you simply allow yourself to focus on that one thing and not get distracted by all the other things, you feel good, your audience feels good, and it turns into revenue and business growth. There we go. This beautiful example.
Yes.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so I have a couple of things that I'd really like your honest advice on. To someone who is doing the side hustle life right now, has the 9 to 5 and working the side hustle, what is your best advice to them? They're really trying to identify, like, is this good for me? Is this bad for me? Should I go one way or the other? What advice do you have for that person in that 9 to 5 and side hustle lifestyle right now?
Yeah, I think the most important thing in your 5 to 9, your side hustle, your whatever you call it, is that getting started should be frictionless. If you've ever been in a relationship with someone, you know the difference between the relationships where it is work to be on the same page. Like, there's fireworks and sparks and all of those magical things, but it's work to be on the same page. And then you know the relationships where you're on the same page and there's still fireworks and sparks. For a side hustle to run and still preserve like your mental health, your flexibility to binge a TV show, all of those things, it needs to be the latter. You should not be forcing things to work. And there's a difference between getting a business off the ground in the growing pains and having been doing the thing for 2 years and it's still being a struggle. Like, if it's that much of a struggle, there are pieces that are broken that should not get fixed, like that you need to be willing to walk away from. So that's my big piece of advice for figuring things out. And I also would say that, like, having a side hustle doesn't mean that you're not allowed to come home and say, F this. I only check my business email 2 days a week for a reason. And that's because on Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday, if I want to come home and not do for my business and binge watch like the entire last season of Game of Thrones to get ready for the new season, like, you have to give yourself that space. Otherwise, you will resent your business.
Yeah. And I can say from emailing you several times over the past couple of weeks, just getting this podcast scheduled and then sending out my, hey, here's some things to do before the podcast, so you're ready. I always get the same autoresponder, and it's very, very clear. Like, there are boundaries to how you approach your inbox, and there are boundaries of how you approach getting back to people, even once you've seen the message. It's so well thought out, and I see those boundaries really serving you well. I think what I heard you say, and this is a conversation I find myself in quite often, or at least I hear it, but it's not always made clear, this distinction between letting it be easy and still allowing for growing pains. And I think that can happen at any stage of business, because especially if you are someone who tends to be an achiever, wants growth, gets to a certain milestone and is already thinking about the next one, you're always growing, therefore you can always find growing pains. But it's an interesting dynamic between letting it be easy and therefore, even though you're working quote unquote hard, it's stuff that you're really enjoying and you're not resenting. That is a very different situation than you're working quote unquote hard and dying for it. It's sucking your energy, sucking your soul away. There's a very different situation going on here. They're both quote unquote hard, but one is essentially easy and one needs to be let go of. Like we gotta figure something out.
100%.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I like that distinction.
Yeah. No, you nailed that.
So tell us more about what you do for your clients in your side hustle. You're a marketing strategist. So how do you work with those clients?
So it's so funny that you ask that. So I used to listen to a client, understand their marketing struggle, and every single one-on-one client I worked with, I would go through the process of coming up with like an entirely custom plan. And it sounds bad to say that I've pivoted away from that, but I've pivoted away from it for a reason. And that reason is when I give myself the freedom to go completely custom, I way overcomplicate shit. Way overcomplicate it. So about 2 years ago, I worked with a process strategist. I don't know if that's still what she calls herself, but her company is Witzel and Laurel. She's amazing. And she literally spent hours listening to me talk about the ways that I work on marketing. And we distilled it into a few different repeatable processes. So today I still do one-on-one work, but we go through this very clear 3-step format, and each step usually takes about a month. And then at the end of the 3 months, they have this crystal clear marketing strategy. They have an understanding of how their brand voice fits into marketing. Basically, it's passionate storytelling, organic brand extensions, and natural connection points is like what it distills down to. Mm-hmm. And we just make sure that everyone has those. And then SEO is a completely separate thing.
Yeah. So do you work the SEO into every marketing strategy one-on-one work you do, or that can just be separate because it's something you're good at?
Yeah. So I teach people that they don't need to be on every platform. They need to like focus on the platform or the marketing lever that is going to drive conversions for them in this season. So we learn about all of them, but we pick one to focus on. And SEO is that piece that like once I've explained it, you can mostly understand it. Mm-hmm. And then if I give you a checklist, you can work through it. So for my marketing strategy clients, we usually don't even talk about SEO. But then people can hire me specifically for SEO. And it's like a whole 45-day thing. And we get really deep and really technical. But it's best not to commingle the two, because even though SEO is a part of your marketing strategy, I find that creative entrepreneurs just don't understand it, and it can be very overwhelming.
Well, and boom, right there. And that was what I was going to say. Do you find that you're working with more creative types in that one-on-one? There's a process to the strategy madness. It's not like cookie cutter, but you've at least got a process of what you walk them through. And then based on, what's going on in their business, that affects the strategy that comes out the other end. And then on the SEO end, they tend to be different types of people.
Oh, yeah. The SEO people tend to be either a heck of a lot more established entrepreneurs or corporate clients, or I actually subcontract for a couple of like branding folks so that when they launch a website, the SEO is also good. And then in the case of the marketing strategy, it's just like you don't go to a 100 level class and then drop a module from a 400 level class in the middle of it, essentially.
Yeah.
The two need to stay separate.
Yeah. You know what I hear is that because we've identified you are on the more creative end yourself as a human, you can help those creative types develop a marketing strategy that works for them. And that's not to say you don't have the technical skill over on this SEO wavelength, but it's just super cool to hear you saying that it can be a both and, but they're still different types of clients. And that really comes back to knowing who you are and focusing in on the things that will come more naturally to you and letting go of the things that won't come naturally to you, because you just straight up, you don't need it. Like you just said, it's like, I mean, why commingle when it's just going to throw you off, right? And distract you. So love it.
Exactly.
I think that's where I want to land. I think this was so good on many different levels. I cannot wait to hear what the listeners have pulled out of this. I think you gave all of us a lot of permission in many places with this conversation, which I pretty much expected because I knew you had your hands in a lot of stuff, and you were being intentional about all of it. And so, especially for me, just reflecting back, it's that furthered permission to show up with the empathy, because that is more of the place that I come from naturally, and not needing to force the technical brain into problems that it doesn't really even need to be into, right? So very cool. I love it. I would love to know, before we go, Dannie, where should the listeners go to find you online?
Yeah, come hang out either over on Instagram at Dannie Fountain or on my website at DannieFountain.com.
Perfect. Okay. DannieFountain.com. I will also link to her Instagram profile in the show notes, so you can just click right over there and follow all of her good career and business stuff and all of her travels, because that's always really fun to watch as well. And of course, to find a marketing strategy that feels good to you, visit marketingpersonalities.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Marketing Personalities Podcast. Now it's time to connect your marketing strategy to your personality type. Go to marketingpersonalities.com/MPP to download your marketing personality type full report. Use the code MPP at checkout to get $10 off. And that's a super special code for podcast listeners as a way to say thank you for being here. In your full report, you'll learn about your personality type, how it relates to the work you do, what your best marketing strategy includes so you can start implementing it right away, what your worst marketing strategy includes so you can avoid it, and so much more. Go to marketingpersonalities.com/MPP to get your full report and use the code MPP at checkout to receive $10 off your purchase. And one more thing before you skip on to the next podcast. Would you please share this episode with your entrepreneur friends who also need to feel good about their marketing strategies? Take a quick screenshot of your podcast app right now and share it out via text, Facebook, or my favorite, Instagram. Remember to tag me at Marketing Personalities in the photo so I can be sure to send you a huge high five and thank you for sharing the love. This podcast is edited and produced by the Podcast Engineers. They're pretty great, and you can find them at podcastengineers.com. That's all for now. Thanks as always for listening, and I'll catch you back here next week on the Marketing Personalities Podcast. Love ya. Bye.